And the governor of Massachusetts has decimated the state in his attempt to keep down COVID deaths, even though we have the third highest death rate in the United States of America for COVID deaths per 100,000. And so a number of legislators have now filed bills to restrict his emergency powers. He's operating under a law that was passed in 1950, the Civil Defense Act. It's been upheld by the courts, which he controls the courts because he controls the purse strings. He pays them, so they do what he wants them to do. So now the legislature, to try to get around this, has various legislators have filed bills to restrict his powers to whatever smaller amounts of time. And there are various bills filed for 90 days, giving the governor the power to run the state and destroy it for 90 days, 60 days, and 30 days. The one I like the best is 30 days. And that's filed by Representative Nick Boldyga of Agawam, and we've got him on the phone right now to discuss what's going on here. Representative Boldyga, thanks for being with us here on the Howie Carr Show.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Howard. Thanks for having me on.
So, why is there a need for this bill or any of the other bills that have been introduced?
Well, I'll say first off, I think that not only Massachusetts but the rest of the country is basically in a constitutional crisis right now. I can say that not one of us thought that this would go on for, as you said, this is the anniversary of a year right now. No one thought this was going to happen, go on for a year, that the governor would have unchecked powers, really, like you mentioned earlier, citing this obscure civil defense law from the 1950s. And it's finally, it was time a long time ago, but we have to do something now. The legislature has to act. We have to restore the checks and balances of government immediately.
Yeah, this was set up at the height of the Cold War, 1950, and this was to deal with, say, like a Russian storming ashore on Cape Cod or Nantucket, right? It wasn't
correct.
To deal with a virus. That the people that passed this bill had no idea that it would ever be used in this fashion.
You're absolutely right. And one of the issues I thought was just extremely disappointing was really the very broad interpretation that our Supreme Court justices took on this bill, really to, I believe, appease the governor, to not wade into what they thought was probably the political front of all of this. So they took a really broad interpretation of that statute. Like you said, that was from the Cold War era, early to mid 1950s, that had nothing to do with really a pandemic. And they didn't want to get involved politically. So they just took a very broad interpretation and said that the governor could go ahead and do this. And I think, what you're seeing around the country is, I think 30 other states right now, legislators have filed similar bills that I have filed. And my bill basically says, hey, you know what? If you're the governor and there's a state of emergency, you can act, absolutely. But what we need to have is that clear checks and balances in place. So after 30 days of your executive order, it goes back to the legislature, and then we revisit it. The people actually get a vote on whatever the executive order is. We can extend it. We can say, yeah, that's it. It's expired after 30 days. We can change it. But we need to restore those checks and balances of government. They've been gone for far too long. A year is too long.
Well, I think another reason the SJC acted the way it did is because I think they've gotten 4 pay raises, pretty substantial pay raises under this guy. And they don't want to upset the apple cart. You know what I mean? They'd like some more pay raises. And yeah. And I listened to the arguments that they made, the questions they were asking when this was argued before the SJC on one of those virtual Zoom hearings, and it was some of the most inane questions. One of them said, "Oh, don't you think the governor's just done a wonderful job in this thing?" As a matter of fact, Nick, I don't think the governor's done a wonderful job, and I don't think a lot of your constituents feel he's done a wonderful job either.
Well, one of the reasons I think we need to have these checks and balances in place, because you're exactly right. One, we don't have any options right now. So the way the SJC ruled, the only recourse is if actually the Senate and the House of Representatives both file resolutions to stop any type of executive order. And they would obviously both have to pass the House and the Senate, which obviously, is a massive hurdle that have to go over and get through. So what the bill that I filed, stops it at the 30 days, but it also makes sure that the courts actually have to hear any lawsuits against the governor in a timely manner. I think when this first started, I think that, there was a number of lawsuits, and there still is, against these executive orders and the lockdown. But the issue is that I think the first lawsuit was not heard by the SJC, and I think it was 6 or 8 months later.
Right.
They just kept putting it off and putting it off. So, anything could happen in an 8-month time frame once you challenge a governor's executive order. And by that time, it's really too late. So we need to put this in place so we actually have those checks and balances. So we can say, hey, it's 30 days. We allowed you to act and put in place an executive order in the middle of a state of emergency. That's fine. But at that 30-day mark, the legislature needs to have a vote on it and have a say in the process going forward.
Now, Nick Boldyga, you're a Republican and you're in a small minority, but some Democrats have filed similar legislation to yours, giving them a little more time, the governor, whoever he is. But is there any appetite among the leadership to do anything about this constitutional crisis, as you describe it, I think aptly, or are they satisfied to let the governor take the heat on everything that's happening? Well, you guys basically don't do very much. You never come into Boston anymore, or very seldom. I mean, are most of the legislators happy to have abdicated all their responsibility and authority?
Well, great points, Howie, as usual. And I think that obviously politics comes into play with all of this, and especially, I'm one of roughly 30 Republicans in the legislature in Massachusetts. So we're a super minority in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I think that, I'm sure that some of my colleagues across the aisle are probably very happy that they don't have to make any decisions during all this. But one of the reasons I ran for office is because I want to be involved. I want to lead. I want to have a say in the process that goes around the Commonwealth. And I think that we should have a vote on this. And it should be that way. And we should have some responsibility in this. Like you said, I've done nothing but heard from constituents on both sides of the aisle over the last 12 months about the pandemic, the businesses closed down that are still closed down, the bankruptcies, the businesses that aren't reopening. God, I think at this point, I've probably helped thousands of people at this point with unemployment claims because of this. And I'm still doing so even today. Every day we're getting unemployment claims. And when I get an unemployment claim, it's because people haven't gotten an unemployment check in 8 to 10 weeks. It's not because I'm helping them file an unemployment claim. It's because they're at their wits' end and no one from the state is getting back to them. So, I think that's some of it. And I think but that needs to end. It's been 12 months. We need to have a say in this, and it needs to change immediately.
All right. So, what should people do if they want to support any of these bills that are trying to reduce the governor's power to just keep the state in this horrible state of suspended animation?
Yeah, I think people need to reach out to their elected officials. Go on the Massachusetts state legislature actually has a very impressive website. I'll give them that. So you can easily find who your state rep and your state senator are. Email them, phone call them, tell them to sign on to my bill, tell them to get involved, and tell them that you want the legislature to have a say in what goes on. They voted for your rep and your senator. They should be at the State House fighting for you every day and have the opportunity to vote on whether or not they think the lockdown should continue or any other executive order that the governor puts forward.
Okay, thanks, Nick Boldyga, for doing this, and you know what? Thanks to the Democrats who filed similar legislation. I mean, it's long overdue, but you wait for you wait for the courts to act, and increasingly the courts are just tools of the executive branch here, both here and in Washington D.C. And it's just very unfortunate that this the way the system is operating. Thank you, Nick Boldyga, for being with us here on the Howie Carr Show. I'm Howie Carr.
If you change the station, the Moonbats win. You're listening.